Hi, this is a video on the evolution of my leopard gecko's enclosure. This is where I had her start out from when I got her from the reptile expo. It looked even worse than this when I really first started, but this is the picture that I have. So it was a 10-gallon tank with reptile carpet. That log that she's right next to is her warm hide. Then she had a moist hide on the other side, but no cool hide. And you can see her food and water dish and just a little bit of plants. Later, I was able to upgrade to a 20-gallon log, so I had to use a different heat mat because the last one I used was adhesive, and adhesive heat mats will break when you remove them and just not be safe to use. So back in this time when I used heat mats, I would have to add legs to the bottom of the enclosure to help with keeping the heat mat from being a fire hazard by allowing for airflow under the tank. I guess I don't use heat mats anymore, so I don't really know. And after I've switched from the 10-gallon tank, before I switched from the 10-gallon tank, I had switched the substrate to non-adhesive shelf liner, and it was okay, I guess. I think at that time I thought that the reptile carpet looked better, but I just decided to stick with this for now. So as you can see, I could now have a cool hide in her enclosure now. And there's the thermostat that I used. But she stayed in here for several months, maybe a year. Yeah, a year. And this enclosure is about to go through a lot of changes. And so I'm sort of just gonna wait for the next part of this, of how I just sort of changed up her enclosure here. Alright, so decided that I wanted to try Eco-Earth. So a lot of YouTubers were doing Eco-Earth, but then I learned later on that it was actually dusty and very loose, and that actually makes activities like digging a frustrating task for them because they can't really make a burrow, as I heard online. So I switched to tile, and then I did experimented with a whole bunch of different types of looks, made a little hammock out of this cloth that I got from the store, and she would sometimes come out. So then I decided that I wanted to switch up the plants a little bit, wanted to add some more wood, and I really love how I did it right here. Here's a video, cute little video of her staring at the camera. So then I decided that I wanted to try a heat lamp, and this was the first time that I would try to do heating without a heat mat. I was also about to try a sand and soil mixture. And in this video, I was touching around on the substrate, seeing how compact it was and how well it held burrows. So I decided to put it into her enclosure. then yes, overnight decided to get her off of it because it wasn't staying compact. It was getting all loose in certain spots, and back then I thought that it always needed to be compact everywhere. So it was back to tile, and this looks okay, yeah. And then I decided to just have the vines a little bit more wild, so then she could have a place to hide. So I was being very iffy about having UVB in there. So for this time, I decided to get rid of the UVB and switch back to having a heat mat, but then I would have a 15-watt incandescent lamp, and that would be used to increase the ambient temperatures, but then I switched back to having UVB. And I think it was around this time that I bought a deep heat projector. So I would have the heat mat for ground temps, and it was being controlled by an on-off thermostat. And then the deep heat projector would be for the ambient temperatures, and that would be controlled with a dimming thermostat. So then after this, I decided to change out the Exoterra cave with this little tub which had dirt or soil in it, because I heard stories about how leopard geckos would get impacted with their own eggs if they weren't allowed to dig anywhere. So decided to get an even more deep tub, so then I could have even more soil or eco earth in there, and I wouldn't be so worried about her getting impacted with her own eggs. And she would also expose her full body, sometime even climbing up that log and just exposing her full body to the UVB and deep heat projector. So I decided, hey, maybe I can have a little bit of loose substrate in there. So I took out the sand and soil mixture, put it onto the sides, and there is a little bit of slate tile exposed at the bottom. And at this time I had joined the Advancing Leopard Gecko Husbandry group on Facebook, and I was getting advice and inspiration there. And then sooner after that, I decided to switch to completely all loose substrate. And I had the enclosure even more cluttered by having a whole bunch of wood and rocks around. And decided that this tank was just too small, and thought I would have to wait for a little bit for a bigger enclosure, like maybe a 40-gallon at least. So I saw online that Pet Supplies Plus was having a sale, so I drove over to their store and saw that they had a 55-gallon tank for $75, and I called my mom and she tells me that, yeah, I can have it. So I had a pet store employee help me load it up into my car, and I drove back home, but I left the tank in the car so then I could prepare and get all the supplies needed to set this up. So I had to research what kind of soil I wanted to use, because for some reason there was no fertilizer-free soils. So I just decided to go for Miracle Grow Performance Organics, and that has safe types of fertilizers like bone meal, sulfate of potash, feather meal, and all this other stuff, but just no manure in it. And then I would get some Quikrete play sand, and I would just mix all that together, and that would be her substrate. So this is where the enclosure started off, and I was not really satisfied with it, but I was having to focus on fixing the lighting. So right here I have the Zoomed Repti Basking Spot Bulb 75 watt and a T8 5.0 Zoomed Repti Sun UVB. And I couldn't use this hardware flood lamp because it wouldn't reach the appropriate temperatures. It did have a beam that was satisfactory, though, and I wanted to get a bulb that could reach preferred temperatures and have a good floodlight beam like this. So I looked at the Exoterra Daylight Basking Spot Bulb 100 watt, and I didn't get it for a while because I was sort of thinking these things over a whole bunch, so I didn't buy that for a while. But once I finally bought it, I got to compare it to the Zoomed Repti Basking Spot Bulb, and hold on, I gotta wait for the picture to come up. Here we go. And this is the beam of the Zoomed Repti Basking Spot, and this is the beam of the Exoterra Daylight Basking Spot Bulb. So this was a good beam right here, so I've decided to use this bulb, and I still use it up to this day. I redecorated the entire enclosure, and as you can see, the lighting was different. I bought some cheap T5 fixtures and got a 22-inch T5 5.0 Zoomed Repti Sun lamp, and the other T5 bulb was a grow light. So I also added some more succulents. And here are some pictures of Asia cryptic basking. I decided that I didn't like the succulents because it was just so common just to use succulents, so I wanted to try something new, and I tried false Aurelias, and they just died on me because I was switching them out too much. I was just so worried about them, and I was probably overwatering them. So after that, I got me a weeping fig tree, and that has been doing very well, and I have not moved it around like I did with the Aurelias, and I've tried not to overwater it. So I'll just wait till like an inch of the substrate dries out. And then under the cork bark is Asia's moist hide. And a picture of me taking the cork bark off of it should show up. Here it is. And there's the calcium dish as well that was under the cork bark too. And then there was a hidden hide that was under all the rocks that I foraged, and that's in a large Exoterra cave. Also made a thermal gradient map. And that dish of sand that you see in the corner, that's a litter box. So Asia was pooping on her rock hide, and it was sort of hard to clean up, so decided to just get a dish, a plant saucer, and just put some plain sand in there, and it's sort of acting like a litter box where I just scoop out her poop. I didn't like how I had to remove the cork bark just to do maintenance on the cool side, so I just got rid of it. I still have it stored somewhere, but it's not in the enclosure. And then I also decided that I wanted to try a sort of background. So I ordered one from Amazon, and I just thought it looks a bit tacky now. And I was sort of trying to imitate Islamabad, Pakistan, which is sort of a very moist area that leopard geckos live in. Like, there's frequently like 70% humidity spikes, but yeah. So I just switched over to window film, and I sort of like it better. People disagree, but I personally like it better. And I also switched over to some thick slate rock, and also changed how I control the heat of the enclosure, because I figured out that when a heat lamp is dimmed, beneficial infrared A and B is being lost. So I decided, rather than controlling the heat lamp itself with a dimming thermostat, I decided to get me a computer fan with a speed controller, have the speed controller set to a little bit less than halfway, and have a cooling thermostat hooked up to it. So instead of a thermostat that's like turning on heat when it gets too cold, it's a thermostat that turns on a cooling element when things get too hot. And this has worked for me well, because I let the ambient temperatures on the slate reach the appropriate temperatures. I also changed the moist hide, used some Quickcrete water stop and some expanding foam. And I like what it did to it. And then I decided, hey, maybe I don't want to imitate Islamabad, Pakistan anymore. I want to now go for a more grassland theme. And so I've rearranged the wood, and like I wanted a grassland and heavy shrubbery. So I was like, hey, dead stuff will really help with that look. So I go out into the backyard. My mom has a big garden of herbs, so I took advantage of that since they were all dead, and it helped a little bit with that, yeah. But I thought there wasn't enough, and there was some of the wrong stuff. So I decided to try and find some more twigs and all that stuff so that I could get that cluttered shrubbery, like just shrubs and grassland sort of look. I also made an updated thermal gradient map, and for Christmas I got me a solar meter, and that was awesome because now I can make sure that Asia always has the correct UVI around her warm side. So after foraging for some more dead plant matter, I say that I'm happy with the results. And the only change I would make is maybe a bigger enclosure, but that's going to be like in the far off future, because right now this will do. And if I ever do upgrade the enclosure, I want it to be glass, and I would probably have to maybe do it homemade. Reason why I like glass is because I can imitate frequent rains in the enclosure through misting, and the glass helps with keeping the environment dry despite how heavily I mist everything. And so finally just got that grasslandish look, that biotope look. And I feel that Asia will love her new enclosure if I ever upgrade. I'm gonna end this video with this cute little millworm beetle playing around with the tall grass that I got from outside. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.